Okay, well, good afternoon to those of you who are in the UK, and I think we're still good morning to those of you who are in Grand Cayman. So it's my pleasure to be here and collaborating with Marina and Cayman Connections and giving a little um, more insight, awareness, and hopefully a useful tool in helping to manage um, anxiety and stress. And obviously, in this context, we're talking about the emotions that are associated with adapting to your new culture. But as we know, anxiety and stress goes across the board into all kinds of situations. So it's definitely applicable to other situations as well. So just a little bit about me, because I know a lot of you know me. I wear a lot of hats. Currently, obviously, I'm in my office, but one aspect that I am the manager for the scholarship secretariat, so a lot of you know me from that perspective and being a part of the Ministry of Education. But today I'm actually here wearing another hat as my trained clinical psychologist and life coach with Life Options, which is a local coaching business, and also as one of the volunteer facilitators with the Alex Panton Foundation. So, I'm an educator by heart. I started off in education a long time ago and transitioned into psychology a few years back. And, it's just been an ongoing and amazing journey. Currently, I'm just learning every day how to enjoy the moment and to continue to grow. I'm an orchid enthusiast, or if you ask my children, I'm obsessed with them.
Mm.
So, hey, could be worse. And single mom of two amazing kids. And in the corner, you'll see that's my Lucas. He is one of the four dogs that I have at home. So, besides work life being busy, home life is, is just as busy, but it keeps us all balanced, right? So, Marina did an awesome job of bringing us, giving us some awareness and understanding of what it's like to move and be a part of a new culture. And those of us who have ever moved or traveled, and whether you've just traveled for shopping purposes or whether you actually had to move for business or as a student, we've all experienced culture shock at some point in time in our lives, right? And as she shared, the process of culture shock is a process. It is a curve that you go through, and so it's not unusual that you have emotions that go with whatever stage you're in, so honeymoon stage, excitement, a little bit of nervousness, but you're looking forward to it, especially for our students who are, getting ready to think about going off to college life. It's like, yes, I get away from my parents. I can live on my own. I don't have to follow the rules, right? If you're a parent, you're kind of going, what's going to happen? They need to focus on studies. So trust me, I know I'm in that boat as well. So all those emotions, I totally understand. Um, and as you get more and more used of that, acculturating to that culture and getting into your routine, at some point, and sometimes it takes a while because that honeymoon stage can last quite a long. It's all the glitz and glamour of being in a new place and being independent and learning new things. But at some point, and usually for I think our Caymanian students, it's usually around whenever there's like some kind of traditional event, so a holiday or something that's coming up, but traditionally you would be at home, right? And it hits, right? And it's the tears, and it's the stomach aches, and it's you know, why did I do this? Why am I here? I want to go home. I want my mom. I want my dad. I want my friends. I want my bed. I want my dogs. I need some cassava cake. you know, the food here, so you go through that, it can sometimes feel like this is never going to end. Um, and sometimes it lasts for a brief moment and sometimes it lasts for a while. But usually you'll find that as you get into a routine in your new environment, that you start to adjust, right? So as you get used to going to your classes, it gets a bit more that might lessen that anxiety and distress, kind of like lessens a little bit. Marina referred to exercise. So you may join a sporting team. My daughter, she plays rugby. And I know that was a huge thing for her when selecting schools. I mean, I was kind of like, look at the degree options, and she was like, nope, we're looking at the rugby options. But that's something that's important to her, and that's helped her to adjust. And meeting new people, new friends, like, Marina said, strangers are just friends that we haven't met yet. So it's, as you get into that routine and you start to adjust, those emotions get a little bit elated. It doesn't mean that you may not feel sad at some point in time and feel homesick or depressed about, not being able to be there for a special occasion. It's a curve, it comes and goes. But it's just being able to, first of all, acknowledge what you're going through and where you're at on that curve. And at some point you may feel like, you know what, I got this completely down. I don't have to worry about anything. I know what to do when I'm starting to feel sad. Well, I go to the store and I get me some ingredients and I go home and make me a good Cayman style meal, right? So it's how you navigate it. So we're gonna use the tool that Marina showed us in terms of annotating, and I'm gonna ask you to put a mark or a stamp where you think you are on the scale on our curve, whether you are in the honeymoon stage, whether you've mastered it, or oops, there goes my things. Go back there. You may be going through some culture shock at the moment. So, just kind of see where people are adjusting, right? Mastery. So I suspect that as we have, seem a bit more professionals than students on our presentation today, that we may have a bit more of the adjustment than we do in the culture shock. But as you said, this can be at any point in time in our lives, depending on what environment we're in and where we're going. I mean, I remember the first time that I went to an orchid show, and I thought this was like going to be the best amazing thing, and I literally went there and stood there, and I was just like, I was so overwhelmed. It was just such a shock to be in such an amazing place, but it was just so much information. It was orchid overload. So I had to adjust. I was definitely not mastering my environment at that point in time. All right, so Kate, can I ask you to clear that for me so I can move to my next screen? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So as we shared, anxiety brings with it feelings of racing heartbeat. You may be getting, feel sweaty in your hands and your palms, that nervousness, sometimes feeling of powerlessness, trembling. So, that anxiousness, like, oh my goodness, those massive butterflies in your stomach. And when we look at the side of culture shock, things that can come up, be associated with that is confusion. You may feel depressed, exhilarated because you like, this is so exciting. Sometimes inappropriate social behavior because you're not really sure of how that culture and that society may respond to certain things. So maybe how you're responding could be perceived as inappropriate. Maureen referred to, people not showing up on time. I mean, Cayman, we have, things on Cayman time, right? So you go to a culture where people are like on time, or usually if they come to Cayman and they're like, okay, the event starts at 8 and they show up at 8 and they're the only people sitting there because, Cayman time means that it usually starts about an hour later. So it goes both ways. Being homesick and even loneliness. We know that right now we're all navigating the world of the pandemic of COVID, and we do have students and families who are overseas and even here locally, and feeling alone because they're in their, whether they're restricted in their movements and so forth. So when we put these two together, there's actually an area that they intersect, right? And those things is, the isolation, the avoiding the social activities, the difficulty in concentrating, feeling irritable, feeling frustrated. These are feelings that go on both ends. And so it's not unusual that if a person is navigating a new environment, a new situation, that they are going to be going through these type of feelings and emotions. And the good thing is that it means then that this is something that you can manage, that this is something that you can deal with and learn how to cope with whenever it does pop up in your life. So in terms of culture shock, like you said, there's different things people may be experiencing. So struggling with assignments, feeling overwhelmed, whether it's with university life, university, or just life in general. I know here in Cayman, things have been feeling very overwhelmed, especially in the beginning when we were dealing with COVID and all that it brought. Difficulty getting back to your own routine, feeling unbalanced and stressed out, angry, irritated, anxious, short of patience, feeling stuck, in need of more energy or motivation, or even sad and depressed. These are all things that persons who go through culture shock or adjusting to their environments can experience. So we have a quick poll where we wanted to see where you're at. Where are you? Where may you be on this for your experiences? So are you or have you experienced any of these? And so feel free to select your option. Here we go. All right, feeling overwhelmed, angry, irritated easily, anxious about everything, difficulty getting back to that routine. Yep,
Let me know when you want to close the poll.
no problem.
Mhm.
We've got a couple more people who are still selecting their option. I think we can end it now, Marina.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So basically, I mean, as we can see, definitely the feelings of being overwhelmed, that anger or irritability, lack of, lack of patience or limited patience. I am quite sure that those persons who were in lockdown with their children and their dogs and their siblings or their spouses, that those tensions did get rise. Everybody's in everybody's space for quite some time, and so it can get, definitely the temperature rises in the environment, right? And then close, of course, obviously anxious about everything and difficulty getting back to your routine. Right. Thank you. Right. So what about culture shock and the pandemic, right? So the pandemic literally is something that we have never ever navigated before. And it is something that we are now essentially still learning on a daily basis how to navigate, because every day it seems to be a little bit different, right? So do we think that the emotions that are associated with culture shock, could they also be similar or even possibly the same in terms of navigating the pandemic? And so when we look at that, called life with COVID, we'll see that a lot of the feelings and the emotions that you may have going to a new environment and adjusting to that new environment are actually a lot similar or the same to those when you're just dealing with culture shock, because it is a form of culture. You know, a lot of our students or families that returned overseas after being here in Cayman in our little protective bubble, are now navigating a whole new world, right? They're having to wear masks, basically every time they leave their home. They are limited in terms of the persons that they can associate with. When the excitement of going off to university and getting that independence and being able to go and socialize and enjoy activities, it has now been basically, if you're living in the UK, that's like put to a halt right now because you're in full lockdown. So they have really had to learn how to navigate this new environment, which really is the same environment they may have just came from, but you're having to navigate because of this thing that now we all have to be very aware of. And for those of us who have remained in Cayman, it's the anxiety and the worry of that person and what they may be going through, and are they going to get COVID, and how are they doing, and if they have to go to classes or do they have to go to work. So everyone, I think it's still not unusual for persons to still be going through those feelings of whether it's you're sad or depressed or homesick, anxious because you just don't know what's going to happen, and just feeling very, very overwhelmed. And so again, how do we manage this? Because we know that if we get stuck in any one of those feelings and emotions, then it impacts everything else that follows, right? You have lack of motivation. That means it impacts your ability to study or to go to work. It impacts your relationships because you don't want to go out and socialize with persons. It can impact your overall physical health in terms of the nutrition you're getting into your body because you don't feel like eating, or the only things that you feel like eating are things that are probably not healthy for you to be eating all the time. And so it has an overall impact on the person's overall well-being, which we know that the body and the mind are all connected. And so your physical and your mental well-being are going to be impacted if these feelings are not managed constructively and appropriately. So how do we manage, oops, my mouse is, how do we manage culture shock anxiety or stress that may be coming along with it? Well, in mindfulness, there is a tool that is basically an acronym on some steps that you can remind yourself to do to help you manage these feelings. And like I said, this is something that you can use to help manage anxiety that may be associated with other things. And it's called stop, right? So when you see the word stop, we all think of stop. You see it on the stop sign, you make sure that you come to a halt. So the S in stop means just that. It means stopping. So if you are in a situation where you are starting to feel very anxious about what's about to happen or what could possibly be happening, the first and best thing for you to do is stop whatever you're doing, right? So you're bringing yourself back to the present moment, because it's not unusual for us to start to spiral with the things that we're thinking about, especially if we're tired and we're exhausted and we're feeling stressed out and overwhelmed. Our mind takes completely over control because we've got this little part in the back of our brain where, it's the fight or flight part of our brain. And if things are starting to get a bit antsy, then that kicks in and says, you know what, you are in trouble. You need to run. You need to just do whatever it needs to do. You need to get whatever, the T-Rex is coming after you, when in actuality, it may not be that, right? So the first thing to do is you're going to stop and bring yourself back into the moment and say, okay, what's going on? Let me just stop here for a minute. The T in stop stands for take a breath. So taking a deep breath in when you stop, in through the nose, out through the mouth, and you can take a deep breath in, counting for 5, and then you exhale for 5. We know that taking breaths helps slow down our nervous system, right? And so if that part of your brain, what we call the amygdala, is firing off saying, alarm, alarm, fire, fire, run, by focusing on your breathing, first of all, it distracts it from that alarm that's going on off on the back of your mind. And so it brings you again back into the present. And it also helps to calm some of those emotions that are being fired off, that nervousness, that anxiety, that racing heart. It helps you to just slow things back down so that you can get back into control and manage what it is that you need to manage, right? So it allows you to just stop, be present, figure out where it is that where I am at, what's going on, and also what is causing me to go like this. What's causing the stress and anxiety in my body, right? So this is where we start to discover and think about our stoplights. And you have yellow lights and red lights. And yellow lights are basically lights that they're signs that, hey, your body is telling you that there is something possibly going on that could be, hey, you might want to pay attention to this. And a lot of times, especially if we're professionals, who also have families, or we're students, we are trying to navigate 60 million things at once. And so a lot of times we don't pay attention to the yellow signals. We just keep going until boom, it's a red light. And usually that's, we're sick. We're so overwhelmed that we've got to, we're taking time off. Or, you end up walking down the stairs, you miss a step because you're going so fast, you're not paying attention, and you fall down the stairs and get hurt, right? So we need to determining what your yellow lights are and your red lights so that you can start to pay attention to what is causing me to be anxious or overwhelmed about this situation. So for example, in a culture situation, if you're new to a school and you're like, well, for example, let's say we've moved back and you're living in the pandemic and you need to go to the grocery store, my masks, what's the routine? So you're going through this stuff. And as you're mapping out how you're going to go to the grocery store, which is something that you've probably done every single day, you jump on the bus or, walk down the street, you have your bag and you go to the grocery store. You now need to put in place things that you never used to before to protect yourself, because this is now the way that you have to navigate your world. And so as you're doing this, subconsciously, your anxiety and all this other stuff, and how am I going to go get to the store? You have to think about, okay, which bus am I taking and how many people are going to be on that bus? Because I can only be, so all this stuff is going on. And so that, that part of our brain is starting to go, hey, wait a minute, this is not normal. Usually we just get on the bus and we go to the store. What's going on? Let's start to panic a little bit, and you'll start to feel anxious. So again, not unusual, right? So by being able to stop being anxious about it, what is it that I really need to do? So the O actually allows you to observe yourself and assess your situation. So for example, is it something that I need to do right now? If you know that it's a busy, busy time in the store, then you can make a decision of, do I need to go to the grocery store right now? Or can I wait till later when there may be less people? Or is there an option that I can actually order this and get it sent to me and the stress that you may be experiencing, in this at that time. So again, in terms of culture, looking at you're new to a university or you're new to a work situation, you're having a social, you're feeling a bit nervous because you're the new person, you don't know anybody, you're going to have to go to this social, and that means you've got to talk to people. How do you navigate that? And you might start to feel really anxious and like, no, I'm not going to go. And, so then you do a reality check and say, okay, what's am I blowing this thing out of control? Well, maybe if I go to the social event, there's probably going to be at least one person that I do know, because if you've been working or going to classes, probably seen at least one or two people. And so, that's what I'm going to do first. I will go up to that individual and say, hi, how are you doing? And start that conversation. And it's learning to let go of needing to control every aspect is also something that helps a lot. And that's not something that's naturally easy for a lot of us to do. I will confess, I like to have everything in place, but it is something that I'm learning to be better at in terms of learning to let go of that control. In actuality, the only thing that you have control over is how you respond to a situation. And we can't control COVID. We can't control the number of positive or negative tests that we hear about on a daily basis. What we can control is how we respond and how we protect ourselves if you're living in that environment, and how we support each other. And so how do you do that? And again, just taking check of the reality, what is the actual, what do you know, what is real, and what is going to be beneficial, and what do you need? So P then means proceed mindfully and carefully. So now that you've stopped, you've given yourself, it's like halt, you have taken those breaths to kind of slow down the body from going completely out of control, and you hyperventilating and going into a panic attack. You have observed what the situation is, and you realize that it's not necessarily something that is crucial, but I still want to go. So now you can proceed with a plan. So I know that I still have to go to the grocery store, which means I'm going to have to take the bus. Okay, so what am I going to do? Well, I'm just going to make sure that I have my gloves. I'm going to have my mask. I'm going to have, my bus fare, my bags, and I'm just going to make sure that I go out and be as cautious as I can, right? And just take care of yourself in that moment, because it's something that you have to do. And if it's not, then, you deal with it at that. For busy professionals, especially I find for women of just women in general who are professionals, but I can speak for my culture, and I know that as Iranian women, we come from a history of women who have taken care of it all and done it all and continue to do and take care of everybody. And usually what happens is we keep putting ourselves back and back and back, right? And if you have kids, you get a lot of times you may feel that, oh, well, I have to say, we've got this social event, and mom has to take you there, and mom has to go there and there and there. And before you know it, mom is just like completely exhausted. And there's this really simple 2-letter word that for some reason we feel like we cannot say. It's no. The world doesn't end if you say no. Sometimes we think it might, but it actually doesn't. And it's actually okay to say no. And this is something that we, strangely enough, have to teach ourselves how to do. And we have to teach the people in our lives to understand that it is okay for us to say no at times that we need to. So it's a process, like I said in the beginning of this presentation. This is something that is continually ongoing, that you may be practicing every day. But the more that you say it, and the more that you practice it, then it does become a bit more natural as a part of your routine. And the other thing that I really encourage people to do is, and especially even more so in the times that we're now navigating in the various culture environments that we have to navigate, is finding moments to just be still, just stopping, breathing, and being present in what is going on and appreciating what is going on. Um, it, you know, be just being mindfulness, the research is overwhelming on how well it is able to help people manage anxiety, distress, chronic pain, and just giving, increasing your overall wellness and well-being. And we know that if our minds are doing well and our mental health is doing well and our physical health is doing well, then everything else is doing well. But if one thing is off, then it just affects, because, if you're mentally exhausted, then there's no way that you're going to be able to work on that composition or that presentation. And so making sure that you're getting enough rest and eating properly and exercising are all things that are very important. But sometimes just not doing anything is important, just as important. I share with clients that, I basically have lived with chronic pain in my shoulders for years, to the point where it was just normal for me to be in pain, so I didn't even feel it anymore. And I started working with the individual doing restorative yoga at Alchemy Yoga. And I think after a month of doing this restorative yoga, and literally what we do is we see what my pain threshold is, and I would just lay there and stretch and lay there for like 30 minutes doing nothing. And it wasn't until probably like a month or so after I was sitting at my computer, because that's usually when it would start building, and I was like, it hit me that I was not in pain. And I was like, wow, this is unusual and this is strange. Like, I've never really experienced this before that I can remember, because I've always had this pain. But it was so ironic that how I was helping to decrease my pain was just by being still, because it allowed me to just my body to calm down and to restore itself and to just rest. And a lot of times we do not give our bodies or our minds time to rest. And if there is one lesson that I learned in COVID, I would say that lesson was it's so important to find those moments to be appreciative of being still, so that I can continue to actually be engaged in what's going on with my life and in the world. So what are situations you think you could use stop? And I think we're going to use the chat, Marina, I think. Is that what we were going to do? Yeah. Okay. So in the chat, you could write, where are situations that you think that you could actually use this technique of stopping, that you may find, you experience anxiousness or nervousness or trying to adjust. Right. Let's see. Kate, can you share what the chat's, because I'm not seeing it on my screen. Sorry.
Hi, yep,
Marina.
unmuting. Okay, so so traffic congestion or road rage is an offer that we've had. That's a really good one.
Yes.
Definitely. Trying to do too much, overachieving. I mean, that I can comment on that, because that's fine. But you might think that you must you keep going and achieve and success, etc. And I think stop is obvious, but it's a good one for that too. Getting nervous before running a webinar. Very good. A webinar or a speech or any event. Yeah, absolutely. Breathing. Sarah says, when plans suddenly change, when you're thinking you're being cancelled. And again, this goes back to that idea of change that we were talking about earlier. Absolutely. Stop, take a breath. Why is this affecting me? Should it be? Can I control it? That's very
we
good.
can't change if things are happening. We can't change if things are canceled. And it just, it just means, okay, what do we need to do next kind of thing. So stressing over it really doesn't help. It's still going to be changed. Even if you spend the next 3 hours ranting, it's still going to be changed, right? So definitely stop is a useful tool for managing everyday anxiety and stress, but definitely even more so when we're bringing it in the context of culture awareness and culture shock, because by stopping, it's also going to open up the opportunity and the space for you to appreciate the culture that you are now experiencing. And if you are overwhelmed and anxious and just, blasting through the situation and the culture that you have an opportunity to check out, you are going to miss so much. And it's going to be, the experiences that you'll be able to have may not be as impactful or as exciting as they could be. Personally, I know that when I went off to university the first time, that I was just like focused. I was like, of course I was like, yeah, I'm supposed to be focused. I'm supposed to study. But I really didn't take the opportunity to explore the environment that I was in, or try out and join clubs and do stuff. I just basically went from school to the apartment and studied. And a lot of it was because I was an introvert, and I was like, I didn't want to go and do those social, I felt uncomfortable doing those social things. Thankfully I have grown since then. But I think it's amazing. I mean, like I said, my daughter's is in the UK, and I'm like, whatever opportunities you have to, find new things and explore new cultures, go for it. And I'm so blessed that she has that, in that part of her that I didn't have, to do that exploring. So like I said, if we don't stop, we can miss a lot. So please remember, stop whatever you're doing, take your breath, observe what's happening to you, learn to recognize your triggers, and proceed mindfully and make the right choice that's for you. A lot of times we try to make choices for everybody else, and sometimes, as parents, we have to do that, but we also have to make the right choices for yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, then you're not going to be able to take care of everybody else. So remember to find moments to be still.
Very true. Very good. Thank you. So you've turned your microphone off. I think that was really, really fantastic. Thank you. Thank you to both of you. Bringing up some really interesting points and things that certainly have made me think. Particularly, we're talking about some of the experiences that we've had, or how we're feeling, the polls. I think probably many of us could have had any number of those. Certainly the motivation and energy issue being the high 100%, everybody who answered said they had problems with motivation and energy. And I think that's definitely something, along with all of the other things, not just with culture, but also with the pandemic. When you look at those, and also, I'm thinking about how each of those elements we can experience, which then brings on another thing, which is these mood swings, which is, you're really happy one moment and then you're not so happy another moment, just all to do with the culture and the change and the pandemic. So I think that's really fantastic. So we've talked about culture, we've talked about the pandemic, we've talked about how crisis can affect your mental health. And I think when we wanted to do this webinar, we really wanted to look at all the aspects, not just talk about COVID, but actually what's happening behind the scenes, pandemic or no pandemic. And I think we've really hit the nail on the head there. It's been really, really interesting. Mindfulness and being still. It's hard, actually. I've been trying to do it for some time myself, and I often find it's hard. Self-awareness, I think, is big on that one as well. So understanding yourself and understanding triggers, I think, is certainly hit home for me. So we are getting close to wrapping up, but I do just want to offer the opportunity for anyone to have any thoughts. Is there anything that's particularly moved you or affected you, or anything you'd like to ask our fabulous ladies any more about? And I can put that either to, if you'd like to take off your mic, or in the chat, either or. And if not, that's good too. I have a theory that if sometimes participants are quiet, and particularly when we're talking about mental health, I'm hoping that that you're taking it in and doing what works for you. And I just want to say, you can reach out to us privately anytime. Cayman Connection, as you may know, has weekly virtual yard meetings where we get together and we have general chats. Sarah and Dr. Shari joined us last week. This week we'll be continuing the theme of mental health, and we're just going to keep the doors open for anyone who wants to carry on this discussion and be there as a means of support. So I think that's the key. Thank you, Clive. Excellent presentation. So thank you, both of you. It really was. And a springboard. I will be sending everybody a little message to say thanks for joining, but also give you the opportunity to feedback with a little survey. I like to think this is going to lead to other things. In fact, I already do. I already know, and I've got ideas. So if this gives anyone else ideas that they'd like to see more of, then please let us know, because we will be doing lots more. So I will just say thank you very much. We really look forward to the next one.